everybody. Welcome to the Parallax Poetry Salon. This is our first bi-weekly Zoom poetry event. And the reason I started this thing is there's this guy named Chim, and he works with me, in higher education. And he gave me his poetry book, and it quite frankly blew me away. It was so beautiful and deep and profound. And I realized that I know a bunch of poets in the Paris area, Anglophone poets in exile, and also I know that a lot of people in our online realm are closet poets or write poetry, to let off steam and cause trouble and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of poets around, and I feel that there's not enough poetry in this hyper conceptual, philosophical, often very philosophical space. So I want to bring more poetry online. That was my ambition here. Um, and so what we're going to do is we're going to do a very straightforward open mic with Chim is going to read his poetry for 20 minutes. And then people who have signed up or people who want to read a poem or sing a song or rant or share their PowerPoint or their plans to take over the world or whatever. Anything goes kind of for the open mic. It's a classic open mic, and what is beautiful about open mic is how bad some things are and how beautiful some things are. And so it's this is what I'm hoping that we can generate some of that creative chaos here at Parallax. So I'm going to start. I picked up a book. I picked up a book out of my shelf. It was a William Shakespeare selected poems from Ted Hughes. And I just picked up a poem randomly, and I thought the way we would start these events is reading a poem by somebody other than ourselves, by a well-known poet. And this is not chosen. This is completely random, but it seemed to also express what I felt. So this is a very short little sonnet from Shakespeare, selected by Ted Hughes. I am giddy. Expectation whirls me around. The imaginary relish is so sweet that it enchants my sense. What will it be when that watery palate tastes indeed love's thrice reapered nectar? Death, I fear me, sounding, destruction, or some joy too fine, too subtle, potent, turned, too sharp in sweetness, for the capacity of my rudder powers. I fear too much, and I do fear besides that I shall lose distinction in my joys, and doth a battle when they charge on heaps, the enemy flying. There you go. So Shakespeare. Okay, Chim, without further ado, by the way, I have to show Chim's book, Convergence. It's unbelievable, and he's working on more volumes of it, I believe. And so please take us into your poetic realm, into your world, Chim.
Okay, so perhaps what I'm going to do, because I'm going to choose poems randomly because it's difficult to choose. Obviously, when you have a lot of work, it's difficult to choose what you're going to read. And as I got here in a rush, I've just laid my manuscripts are on the ground, on the floor rather. I don't live in the street, but on the floor, and I'm just going to randomly pick them up and just choose things to read. Okay, so this is a long poem it's called Turnover, and I tend to write what I would call volumes, which can be just interlacing poems in the form of a book. And this is more of a what you would call like more of a standard modernist long poem, and which I found surprising to write because I rarely write long poems per se. So I'm just going to read a few of them, just a small part of this book. and it's called Turnover. It's catching up again, but other than an abyss looking into an abyss, reflecting the blank peripheries. To renounce this engendered trance, this dance with wound ghosts, immobile waves surfed. It's catching up, light as blueprints in the snow, as emanations from the drift of seasons. This desire to live in spite of the living and their progeny of absences, condemned to be joyously here, convinced to be standing firmly at the vector of where you're standing, calling it or not the earth, ground, palpable distance, ahead of oneself, shadow surging from shadow, a ripening beyond the pit and the fruit. Once again letting go to have worlds take shape and place. And what matter if you're in or not in the way, put aside to witness births or collisions? What matter the question of where or not go the smoke rings, the sum of our works, and topos as sum, what we've destroyed or built in error, heavenly bodies, fractured transparencies for whom only bloodshed was real. Something else spirals outside the breaking human circles to settle on the ash of impossible words, bittersweetness transmitted to which we're numb or captive, constant flash of the circuits, the instant, the ridiculous instant, the storm-lit horizon in which we seek and admit to what we seek. It isn't difficult, less so than gravity pulling blood into pockets of the earth. What's difficult is to receive, to be host to the guests that spoke at night. Something moved in the foyer and was heard by the inner ear, a lock gently breaking, the outline of a fallen away epiphany, the discrete ghost of quotidian memory, which was taken for death and not as a coming clean, as a persistent transparency to build on, as what hadn't yet crystallized, couldn't and would not be other than a humming breeze for the occasional reed, the miraculous accessory and access through circular dreams, these aimless blocks and masses. The unsayable, too, was returning, the heartbeat of space, a window from which beloved voice was calling out. Okay, so that's the first part. Okay, so I'm just going to read just a few parts of this. So now let's just take a look at. Okay, so this is just another one. So you'll just hear it. I'm not going to explain anything. So you are not a tree rooted, but a moving ocean, a burning. You are not an ocean, but drifting smoke of a scorched nest. So much for the representations of exile, the stakes of suffering, dear incubus, what they bet on in the rings. The source is also what stepped out of history, yet histories, unperceived weavings, unpredicted encounters, and the growth therein. So much for the book, the call and response patterns caught by tracking chips. Voice was nurturing a street corner of La Courneuve, making its way through abandoned concrete, a silkworm through the dead city body, the royal skull, the network, le corps neuf, which is another way to put it, the new body, and how to make out the blood from the wine, the eyes from the delusion, the silences, life or death bound, the rhythm from the temple, the metronomic death. Tear open the piano, give the keys to passers-by, go into the symphonic heart until it rings. The sound waves ripple off into surrounding space. The blue topos and the root of blue as to make, to usher in, not the floating world, the white world of the forgotten lily, the frog plopping into the eternal muck, but to break open the keyboards, throw oneself against harps of the abyss, the broken harps haunting space, our furtive encounters, interstitial hummings. Okay. And just one more from this particular volume. This is towards the end. So, another floating afternoon, eternal afternoon, being at mid-center, suspended but not waiting. Let the present, the instant, take care of itself. The light cloak that settles to dissolve on our shoulders. The flame coat for which we're both ash and phoenix. Such is always occurring, in harmony or at war with elsewheres that would claim us as their own. Let the guiding threads disappear, the sky and the labyrinth. The work is to be with and without, in spite of and for, twice over. The figure 8 is whirling through the trees. The white spider silence. Okay, so those are just a few elements of this particular volume. So I thought I would just move on to something else. So yeah, so I'm just picking something up. So this is a volume called Intervals. So these are all part of Convergences. This is the other part of the book that I've been working on. And this is one volume called Intervals. So I'm just going to read. So these poems are rather, well, they're short. So, sitting alone at the terrace of an imagined ocean, in the heart of traffic, noise of these streets attains frequencies of the sea. The mind is at peace in its analogical worlds, in its shadowless equivalencies. Topos becomes body surfacing from the intervals, yet invisible as time is invisible, and all that is possible at the crossroads. The men have begun to move on, no longer captive to the operas of silence, the voice of the shifting abyss. The ships went down with the muses, the vital illusion. The feminine spaces broke away to return as dark waves, to erase reminiscence and memory, feed and exult on the pulse of death. So let me just go to something here. Just trying to. So I'm just going to go to the end of it. So, or it could be otherwise. At the close of the story, a willed ellipse, the story as parentheses, window by which you step outside the frame where the myth was contained to embrace the toll of the new darkness. And I'm just going to, so I'm just going to pick up Convergences, and I'm just going to start with the second book, which is called The Book of Returns. So it's it's poetry, prose, poetic prose, I don't know how to call it, but it's a mix of a lot of things. So this is just a small, I call this prose. Anyway, so there's something in drifting, in not having a destination, that lends a presence bordering on radiance to all persons, places, and things we encounter in the spectrum of movement. Things surface before our eyes, and people approach us more fully from the depths. Because to drift is to suspend all sense of relation between where we are going and where we've been, to experience tenuousness until the otherwise insignificant becomes our only solid ground. The great danger of being in the sea of city noise is that of finding a balance in it, of achieving immunity, of rooting oneself in a dark grace, a lightness more of a fatigue than a sense of inner habitation, a refuge in the dim reserve of light from which, and by virtue of the scope of night, of ceaseless forces, it's rare to expand and bear fruit in an analogical correspondence. And with the blowing of horns, assault of the vernacular, the ever-widening constellation of imps increasingly assured of their infinity, to be pushed to go further under, through harder and harder stone, in a deadly escape. And the things that were thought distant, through which you thought you'd passed, horizons for which there could be no reflection nor right, no sea to gather this force, this blood consoled by neither flow nor color. You have not yet seen, only ordered the sounds of knocking, drawn all the keyholes, not the fissures deep in ice, which for you is blank space, eraser of orbits. To draw from this space, emerge through this space, flame in the hourglass, released between sleep and waking, a slit in the verb, its glares full impact, an image rises, billows in heat, where worlds begin and bodies rest in bodies which can't be erased. Bird of omen, a dark wave tears at the eyes. The eye, another, neither mirror nor witness, describing air that invades the book, that invades the heart. Space, not a door, is now open within you. There are no more returns. Absence the magnet, the promise of time. The doubles have multiplied, the mirror's deck cut and spread out, random in wind the selves images, our work to harness then harvest, shadow in petrified depths. To put the folds in place again neatly, far from the centrifugal wave, simply to be in the body of sleep, channeling ghost sails dispersing. Sadness becomes mass by the river. With wind come the specters of density, resonance and its bed of lakes. In the tautness of a bow, a horse, wind, and field are harvested. A song moves in its own space, implicated, implicit to this or that star the touch has bewitched. A perception shapes the world about itself. A ball of smoke recedes from outer regions with gifts for the body or flames. Then dream, dream as stone dreams of the pawns future brings. And just a few more, and then I'm going to stop. So I'm just going to edit this. Okay. So how much time do I have left? How much time do I have left? A few minutes?
Mic's off, Andrew. Andrew, you're talking into a closed mic.
Yeah, sorry. You've been going for about 15 minutes, but you know, you can go a bit over. We can be a bit fluid with the time. So just do a few more and stop when you feel it's the end.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm just going to read a few more. So this is from another volume of the same book. It's called Foreground. So I'm just going to read a few of these. And the in-between, the parentheses, for now not vector of salutary artifice, years spent and so alive in the second and third person, away from myself, another body, leaping the hurdles of epitaph, witnessed from invented contours, skies traversing invented flux. When the sum of roads is less than that of a road, you call that catastrophe. The rift between now and August, the large night's light is but a spark in spite of flesh and the dense weight of feelings. Hope is in almost essential gravity. Could be winter coming in, vectors returning with always the same atmospheres. What to make of these times, and what vector of flight out there, and what fidelity beyond blood, now that the lice too cling to the source.